The Soccer Ashes for 2025 is set to kick off tonight. The Socceroos taking on the All Whites. Game 1 in Canberra and Game 2 in Auckland. Now, these two teams last met back in 2022, where in fact the year beforehand, the Soccer Ashes itself was found. Of course, it is cigarette and, smokes that were smoked by the two captains of the All Whites and the Socceroos back in 1923 when this started. And very much now this has become a tradition that these two teams are going to meet for the Soccer Ashes. I'm going to preview it all for you today because I'm Nick from Nickn'detail, and today I'm going to be previewing the 2025 Soccer Ashes, which starts tonight. So let's get into it. That's right, for the first time since 2022, the All Whites and the Socceroos will meet in a trans-tasman rivalry. We're wondering, to be honest, when this is going to happen because, of course, a few years ago, the Soccer Ashes were found and a series was announced that year in London. That one-off game they played at Brentford's G-Tech Community Stadium, where it was the Socceroos that would record a comfortable 2-0 victory. But the teams have changed since then. I think more notably, undergoing some coaching changes as well. Of course, Darren Basie has been coaching the All Whites for the last couple of years, and the Socceroos last year appointed Tony Popovic as their head coach after Graham Arnold stood down. So both these teams have gone through a bit of a coaching restructure, and both, of course, are qualified for next year's FIFA World Cup. And now they're set to continue their trans-Tasman rivalry, with Game 1 of the Soccer Ashes kicking off tonight in Canberra. For the second game will be played on Tuesday night in Auckland. So let's get my thoughts on these two games coming up. I think this is going to be a great series to watch. I think considering that game a couple of years ago between the two teams where the Socceroos very much dominated a disappointing All Whites outfit, but I think since then, as I said, both teams have very much changed. I think we've seen the All Whites just look a lot better against these top opposition. Of course, more notably their last games back in November for the back into March for the Canadian Shield, where of course they took on Ivory Coast and Ukraine, ranked inside the top 30-40 in FIFA rankings. The fact they were able to beat the Ivory Coast and narrowly go down to a Ukraine side that were ranked higher than the Ivory Coast, I think was a great sign of things going forward for New Zealand football ahead of this World Cup. So I think they'll take great confidence out of that last international window coming into this one. For the Socceroos, of course, they breezed through their Asian qualifiers for the FIFA World Cup, only losing to Bahrain, but have been on a pretty good run themselves. In fact, haven't lost a game, of course, since that Bahrain game back in September. And Tony Popovic, of course, appointed last year after Graham Arnold, stepped down from the role. It looks like he's got his Socceroos side going in the way he wants them to play ahead, of course, of next year's big World Cup. So then both these two teams are going to very much put on a great show for everyone. It's great we've actually got this Trans-Tasman series back. I think we see it in a lot of sports. In football, we haven't really seen it too much. So it's great that, of course, with these Soccer Ashes found a few years ago, that very much the confirmation is we're going to be having these fixtures a bit more regularly. And of course, that all starts tonight. And I think it's going to be great that we get it every couple of years at least between these two countries. And I think particularly coming into a World Cup near next year, I think it's going to be very important for both these teams to get more valuable minutes in these international windows coming up. Of course, we know after this, the All Whites, of course, are in action, of course, in the next window. The Socceroos yet to be confirmed yet, but I think regardless for the All Whites and Socceroos, it's great. They're going to be playing each other in a big trans-Tasman rivalry and what should be two great games to watch. So who is going to be my player to watch? Well, I'm actually going to go to the Socceroos camp, and my focus is going to be on Nestori Irakunda. Now, this guy is back in the Socceroos squad for the first time since October. He hasn't really been able to crack that Socceroos squad since then. Of course, he's had a bit of a tough couple of years, shall we say, since that breakout year he had a couple of years ago for Adelaide United. Of course, got that move to German powerhouse Bayern Munich, and of course, very much spent time in their reserves team there. And the odd first team bench game here and there, played a few pre-season games for their first team, but never really got to see him crack that first team. Very much like Sarpreet Singh failed to do, those few years ago where he joined the Phoenix off the back of his impressive season in the league, in the A-League here a few years ago. But this led to Irakunda actually going on loan a couple of times, went to Switzerland, but it would be eventually Irakunda who will be sold to English Championship side Watford, where he's off to a flying start. 2 free kick goals already from the young winger across the opening couple of English Championship games, and it's earned him a recall in Tony Popovic's Socceroos squad. He's such a great, dynamic, athletic player. He's so quick with the ball, just always looking to create chances. Just that really good young winger you want to have. And I think he's going to be an absolute, trouble for the All Whites backline, particularly, of course, where Liberato Kakache is not playing in this window, having withdrawn from the squad, having just recovered from a hamstring issue that kept him out of Wrexham's last couple of, football games prior, of course, just to the week gone, where he made his return from those few weeks off. So I think, Francis de Vries likely to step into that left back role. I think is going to have a bit of a hard time defending Irakunda, and I think certainly is going to be the one to watch back in that Socceroos squad. So if Nestori Irakunda is going to be my player to watch, I expect big things from him from his international window, and very much looking forward to seeing the player he has been doing, well, the player he has become for Watford over these last few months. So what is my prediction for this series? Well, game one, of course, kicking off in the Australian capital tonight in Canberra. I'm going to say a Socceroos win here. A close game, I believe, but it's going to be a 2-1 win for me for the Socceroos in this first game. The second game back in Auckland, I'm going to pick a draw out of this one. I'm going to go 1-0. I just really like the way the Socceroos are looking at the moment. A good young squad coming through. A lot of their players, especially over last season, of course, securing moves over to Europe, let alone, of course, the English Championship for Portsmouth. Like 5 or 6 of them are playing their trade of football at the moment. I think the Socceroos have got a really great deep squad, in this international window, but also especially as well in the European football leagues as well. There's competitive leagues, in England, very competitive league over there. I think it's great that they've got that depth, and yeah, I think it's just going to be too much to handle for this All Whites team. I think the All Whites will very much, show how much they've improved under Darren Baisley over this last year or so. I was very impressed with how they played in the Canadian Shield just gone, and yeah, you could really say the World Cup qualifiers, even though Oceania, no disrespect to the Oceania teams, is a bit of a breeze, but I think at the same time, they're missing a couple of key players in this squad. Of course, Akache, as I said, is withdrawn from the squad due to just coming back from his injury. Alex Poulsen won't be available, although likely wouldn't be able to see him play anyway, with Max Crocombe likely to be the first choice. But Poulsen not available in this window because he just secured his move over to Poland on loan from Bournemouth. So wanted to get settled in there, which makes sense very much to all parties. And Henry Gray, the young goalkeeper over at Ipswich Town in England, and Luke Brooksmith out of the Wellington Phoenix, the young 17-year-old striker, called in. But I just think very much that Socceroos team is going to be too much for this All Whites team. So I'm picking the Socceroos to once again reclaim the soccer ashes. But it's going to be, for me, really great to see we get the soccer ashes now, every few years. So great, especially that we're going to have a 2-game series now. I felt like that one-off game in London was probably a little bit unfair. I mean, made sense, neutral ground, London, a lot of players based in Europe, made total sense in terms of travelling logistics and also the window itself. But really great we get to see them come back here and play. Obviously, Canberra and Auckland as well too. Decently sized venues as well, and both are expected to pack out as well, especially in Auckland. So I think really great we get to see these two teams once again meet for the soccer ashes, and very much looking forward to watching these 2 games across the next week or so. But that's going to be it from me. Until next time, I'll see you later.